Hey guys, this is Rubin Report. I'm still Dave Rubin. You guys know Max Lugavere many times. What are we talking? 6, 7? What do you think we're at?
6 or 7, something like that.
6 or 7-time guest, Max Lugavere. And I brought in another David, who is dressed exactly like me. We did not coordinate this. It's just how it worked out. David Darg, who is the co-founder of RYOT.org. And you're a world traveler. You've been in pretty much every disaster area known to man. How do you feel nerve-wise to be here right now?
Oh man, I'm freaking out right now. This is a big deal.
Totally freaking out. All right, well, we got a lot to get to, so let's get to it. What's the deal with white people?
The owner of Rub and Butts Barbecue wants you to know that at his restaurant, June 11th is White Appreciation Day. The catch? The owner of the restaurant is Hispanic. The owner said, "We have a whole month for Black History Month. We have a whole month for Hispanic Heritage Month. So we thought the least we could do was offer one day to appreciate white Americans." With more than 80% of the town's residents being white, customers could be lining up around the block to get their discounted pulled pork and brisket. The owner promises that this is not a joke. Having been a victim of racism before in his own life, he hopes the attention will start a productive discussion about race.
Okay, so the reason I thought this was interesting was because when I first saw this on the internet and on Twitter, everybody was going crazy. White Appreciation Day, like it was some sort of KKK event or some sort of white supremacist event, right? But of course, it turns out that the guy, basically this is sort of a joke, and he's just saying, look, black people have their month, Latino people have their month, white people, we're gonna give them a couple hours, no big deal. But the outrage machine just gets going. When you saw the headlines on this, what do you first think?
Well, that's the thing. People on the internet only read the headlines, so they see it, they get outraged. But I think it's actually kind of a funny, cute initiative. I mean, you could tell that the guy has a sense of humor from the name of the restaurant alone.
Yeah.
Rubbing butts, right? That kind of gave it away for me that if it was in fact some kind of like older white racist dude, that it would be awfully ironic.
Yeah. If it had been an older white racist dude, would it have still been okay if he just wanted to do that in the privacy of his own restaurant? I know we're all over everybody for baking gay cakes and flowers, but would that have been okay?
Probably not, especially like right in the heels of Baltimore going on and Ferguson. I don't know if it's ever a good time, but certainly not now would be a good time.
Yeah.
And what's the point of these days anyway? These appreciation days are to celebrate minorities, right? And with whites not being a minority, what's the point of doing that in the first place?
Yeah, so what do you make of that? Because we do have a lot of that in the country right now. I feel like there's this feeling that white people feel like they're under attack, which seems to be the reverse of what's actually going on. But in another way, it seems like a human reaction to changing times or something. What do we do about white people? Like, you do hear this all the time, that there's a lot of people that feel like, oh, everything's changing. Well, things weren't so great for minorities in the 50s, so yeah. Shit changes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's definitely a time where, our sensitivity radars need to be, primed and in sort of, full operation. But this story, I just feel like is, it's benign.
Is there some legitimacy to sort of white people feeling like things are changing too fast or anything like that?
Absolutely not. I mean, come on, the more multicultural we get, the faster, the better. And I think this is clearly a PR stunt. I think it's working really well for the guy. He's all over the place, so good for him. But let's not have a White Appreciation Day anytime soon.
Yeah. What do you guys think about just the general state of race, which we talk about a lot on the show? We did a story last week that, right now in the country, most polls show that white people and black people feel almost polar opposite about the state of race relations. It seems to me it's obviously a lot better than it was 50 years ago, but it seems like we've had this like sudden slide backwards, or is that a media construct, or what? What do you think?
I think that, obviously we live in a heated time for sure with, what's going on in the news, but I think these are conversations that need to be had. And so, it's important to recognize our, the white privilege that I think we have, and to go with full sensitivity and to recognize why minorities, would feel so outraged.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean you're giving up any of your white rights, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you're going to be okay as a white person. What do you think about the general state of race in America right now?
Yeah, it's shocking. It comes in waves, right? We had the Rodney King in the 90s, and now we're sort of back to that place where everything's kicking off and there's all of this stuff's going down. And I don't know why that happens like that. It kind of surges and then it goes away. And maybe the media feeds a lot of that too, But we clearly have a problem. I mean, a lot of these riots are being instigated by police brutality, which is clearly out of control. So we need to deal with those issues. And once we fix those, hopefully we can all get back to being friends again.
Well said. There's a fitting ending for this one. All right, White Appreciation Day by a Latino owner at a restaurant for a couple hours. What do you think? Let us know in the comments right down below. Remember that massive ecological disaster that nobody talks about anymore?
It's been 5 years since the BP Deepwater Horizon oil rig exploded, sending 200 million gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico, making it the worst spill in U.S. history. A new report from the National Wildlife Foundation shows wildlife in and around the Gulf are still feeling the effects. Dolphins are dying at 4 times their normal rate, while 12% of brown pelicans and 32% of laughing gulls have died as a result of the spill. The report also says that the spill has affected endangered sea turtles, red snappers, coral colonies, and different species of fish, but these affected animals are only a small portion of the 13,000 species in the Gulf.
All right, so I wanted to do this story because it touches on 2 of my favorite topics and things we talk about here a lot. One being the environment, obviously, but second, sort of the news cycle and how we ingest news and how we get outraged by something and then we forget about it the next day. So David, you've been to disaster areas all over the world. You're actually living this stuff, not just talking about it like me. How do you think, how are we supposed to manage when something happens, like actually still paying attention to it and not just letting it be something you care about for 3 days and then forget about?
Yeah, it's a tough cycle. I just got back from Nepal 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was there for the earthquake, and during my time there, the media was really focused on the situation there. And now that I'm back, I'm seeing how we're sort of turning away and looking at different news stories, and that's natural. That has happened since the beginning of news. That something's hot for a moment, and then it goes away. And it's important that we are reminded of big stories like BP. To be honest, I had forgotten about BP. I mean, it did happen a long time ago, but to see what's still going on there is tragic.
Yeah. And isn't that interesting that 5 years ago seems like a long time to us? I mean, it's not really. And remember, for those, how many days was that thing just spewing oil out to the ocean? Everyone kept saying, well, this is going to be a 100-year ecological disaster. And yet 5 years does seem like an incredibly long time.
It does, yeah. And to see what's going on there now, there's clearly a lot that still needs to be done.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why we founded RYOT, so that we can continue to highlight really important stories and sort of break the news system, if you like, and not just sort of keep going to the next thing and the next thing and try and resurge important stories like that.
Yeah. I mean, what can we do? I mean, you're someone that's sort of involved in things that RYOT's doing. Like, what can we do as people that talk about the news to not forget about this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, obviously there's a lot going on in the world, so, you know, it's not that we're just, you know, we have like some sort of like news ADD, but, you know, like yesterday the news was all, you know, Amtrak, obviously the tragedy that happened down there. So like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that it's important for media companies like RYOT to continue to surface things like this that require our attention. You know, I think that like when you're watching TV, the it bleeds, it leads mentality can be counterproductive to, you know, a sort of broader worldview. But I think, you know, thanks to the internet, thanks to media companies that aren't beholden to the TV broadcast news model, I think that they really have the ability to make a change and keep these things on our awareness radar, you know?
How much of it do you think is on us as the consumers? Because it seems to me it's not just, like, people will say, well, you know, when there are riots like in Baltimore, they focus only on, you know, a cop car that's burning or something. But I don't think it's that the media is sitting around having some big conspiracy about what to show, as much as that's what people watch. So like, is it us? It's really us that's at fault as much as the media companies, right?
I think maybe you do have to cover something, go away, but then the important thing is to come back and not just leave it and continually move on and on. Media companies need to remember that the story is ongoing, and so maybe you turn away for a little while, but come back to the story and follow up on it.
So is it not just the news cycle, but it's also Twitter, pretty much? Like, we're so used to just stuff changing hour to hour. It's like, I mean, really, Nepal was barely 2 weeks ago, right? I mean, it seems already like we're on, and there was just another earthquake, was it yesterday or the day before? So it's like, this isn't gone already, and yet...
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the, you know, most important questions of our time that we need to find an answer to. Like, how do we sift through all the data and all the information that's out there to find signal amongst the noise, you know? I mean, like, distraction today, I feel like, is obesity of the mind, in a sense, you know? We've got to look to media companies and curators like yourself, like what I try to do on Twitter, you know, to sort of sift through the sort of debris to surface real meaningful content.
Yeah,
you know?
Distraction is obesity of the mind. Is that yours? Did you just make that up right then? Just right then there?
It could be in the soup somewhere, and it just came. But
it was in the obesity of that's pretty good. I do like that. Last thought on this: do you think that natural disasters get the coverage that they should? So you were just in Nepal, as I keep saying. So did it get, at least for those first few days, did it get the type of coverage that that was warranted?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for the first few days, it was just blanketed everywhere, and that's what you would hope for. What's interesting to me is that we've had a few recently that have gotten huge coverage but haven't had the kind of response that we hope for, like the Ebola crisis, for example. When that thing was happening, it was everywhere. But because Ebola came to the U.S. shores, that was our focus. We turned inward.
Right. We focused on the guy in Brooklyn who went bowling.
Exactly. And we forgot about the real crisis that was ongoing in Africa.
Yeah.
So that's another danger too.
Yeah.
You know, let's make sure that we remain focused on what the real issue is and give that the coverage.
Another good ending. Remain focused on the real issues. What do you think? Is this the media's fault? Is it just what people clicked? Are you still paying attention to the disasters that happened 5 years ago? Let us know your thoughts in the comments right down below. Happiness isn't just about what medication you're on. It also depends on where you live.
The World Happiness Report for 2015 is out. Published by the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, the survey attempts to measure the happiness of citizens across 158 countries.
So a lot of Western countries there. I know countries in the West seem to get a lot of shit these days, but I guess we're doing something right in the happiness department. Maybe it's because we're making countries in the East unhappy. I'm not sure. But let's start with number 15, the United States. Does that seem about right to you guys as Americans? Do you feel like we're roughly, that seems ballpark?
Yeah, we're moderately happy.
Yeah. Is there any chance we could ever be as happy as the people in Switzerland? I mean, isn't that like the thing? Like, they don't get involved in anything really, so, and they're a very homogeneous society.
Right.
So it's like there's a certain level of happiness that maybe we just can't get to.
I hadn't thought of that. Maybe that's why they're number one and we're down there towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't start any wars. They eat a lot of chocolate.
So it's chocolate and
Maybe.
no wars.
Yeah. Maybe.
What else would be the keys? Chocolate, no wars, those sound good.
Yeah, just how beautiful the location is that they're in, you know, like,
Yeah.
I think sometimes people need to learn how to be happy. I think that's an important thing, you know, like meditation I know is very, seeing a sort of renaissance these days. You know, I think that for many people, it's just something that eludes them because they're just too much, you know, caught in the moment and they're not, you know, they don't know how to be mindful and grateful for what they have, perhaps.
Yeah, let's throw the image back up for just a second. David, what do you make of the fact that these are mostly westernized countries? So in all your travels, was there somewhere you went where that's not on this list that you think that the people might be happier? And also, of course, we all gauge happiness differently.
Yeah.
So I'm not 100% sure of the scientific basis of all
Yeah,
this.
it's interesting. I'd love to know how they gauge this, but I often find that the places I go in the developing world, the people seem happier, and that sounds terrible because we always associate Africa, for example, with poverty, and there are people living in extremely difficult conditions, but when you look at people, how they live there in their family unit, I often see people's just level of joy, being always with their family, living in tight-knit communities. That's real happiness as far as I'm concerned. I see it a lot in developing countries. So I don't know how they come up with that list, but if I had to gauge a list, places like Senegal and Africa, the people there, to me, seem way happier than Swiss people, for example.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I guess that's the catch-22 of westernized civilization. Like, we get all these gadgets, right? We have all of our iPhones and all that stuff. But is any of this stuff making us any happier? Do you think that all this technology that we have and this interconnectivity, do you think it's making us happier, actually?
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, obviously things, you can't buy happiness, you know, the time that I've spent abroad in Europe and things like that, I think people tend to spend their money more on experiences. And that, I think, is something that we don't necessarily appreciate here in the States as much.
Does it all come down, though, to what you're saying about like the family unit? I was in El Salvador 2 years ago. It's a true third world country. I mean, they literally don't have, they have garbage that they're burning on the street because they don't have trash pickup. But the people there all did seem they were poor, but they did seem pretty happy, actually.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between happiness and joy, maybe. I don't know how to define it, but there is something there that we don't experience.
Yeah.
Maybe it's loneliness versus happiness. Here, we're consumed by our devices, like you said, and we sort of find solace in our iPhones. And there, it's like you're with your friends all the time. You're running around on the street. You're having fun. I don't know, but maybe there's the correlation with the coldness. I've noticed that the top countries there seem very cold.
How does that make any sense? I'm not a cold guy, hence I live in Los Angeles. But yeah, Switzerland, Iceland, Denmark, Norway, Canada, Finland. Yeah,
they're all at the top of the world.
That is very bizarre.
That is bizarre.
Wait, so Australia, number 10. Israel, Middle East, so it's warm over there, but wow. Anyway, what do you think? Are you happy? Where are you watching this right now? And does that make any sense to you? Let us know in the comments right down below. Childhood soon to not be fun at all.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your kids are? Experts are working on a new GPS microchip to implant in children so parents never have to stay up late worrying again. Although this Orwellian concept is in its infancy, it might not be as far off as you think. Using the same technology as the chips in our smart keys and credit cards, scientists say you could easily track a human with ID scanners placed on doorways, counters, and street corners. Trish Dickerson, a mother of a 3-year-old, said, "I microchip my dog. Why couldn't I microchip my son?"
Oh, Trish, you microchip your dog. Why not your son? All right, my dog is microchipped. I think that maybe she thinks it's a slight invasion of her privacy, but I think I'm doing the right thing. But to me, what's dangerous about this is just this endless extension of being watched all the time between the NSA and us all walking around with GPS on our phones. The other day, I was doing something on Gmail, and something popped up, and it was like, can Google track your location all the time, which I clicked an eye on. I assume they still do it anyway. Like, to me, it's more about the conditioning that we're going to have this generation of people growing up being used to watch, or that the government's watching them, they're going to know that, and they're going to be chipped. I mean, this is a Philip K. Dick novel in the making, isn't it?
See, I don't think it's a horrible idea, because obviously, like, kids are not necessarily in control of their whereabouts, all the time. And
kids get kidnapped, all kinds of horrible things happen.
Well, but I also think that there's use for that technology, like were that technology to be developed and to be ready for prime time. I mean, there is a whole subclass of people with cognitive disabilities that could really benefit from that. People with dementia, Alzheimer's, that get lost all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that could potentially be useful in those
And they do
scenarios.
have something like that. Like, I think for some patients, they have like wristbands or things like that, right?
But with the wristband, I mean, then comes the challenge of having to take it off, charge it, make sure that it's like functional.
Right.
So the microchipping just might be a more seamless way. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, there is the potential for it to end up in the hands of people that will misuse the technology, and that's where it gets dangerous.
Right. So, for example, you could say, all right, well, then we'll put it in all the kids, but we're not going to turn it on unless there's an emergency. But then do you trust the people that they're not going to turn it on?
This is like where the end begins for me. Yeah. And so what happens? They put it in a kid, they track it. At what age do they pop it back out? Or does it stay in you?
That's why I think the conditioning is the dangerous part, because then, all right, so they say, your parents say that it has to be till you're 18, but then by the time you're 18, you're like, it's in me, I'm not going for the thing, and then just Skynet's part of this, and Terminators. I mean, don't you see that that's where this is all going?
It could potentially be misused. It could, open up a wormhole of just... misuse, and I think that that's scary. I mean, I had the Find My Friends app on my iPhone working for a while, and I was like using it to see where my brothers were, but after a while I deactivated it because I thought it was, first of all, it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
But then, it could be a bit of an invasion. Also,
isn't part of growing up that you're supposed to be able to climb out of your bedroom window and disappear and go to the big city and your parents not know where you are? Like, I mean, really, isn't that an important piece of growing up, like experiencing what freedom is?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if this does happen, you're going to have kids doing the classic Bourne Identity thing and picking the chip out so they can go and like hang out with their buddies, not have mom spy on them. But
it's like a Black Mirror episode.
Which I've been talking about a ton on the show. I love Black Mirror. So what do we do? I mean, every time I do one of these technology things, I always say, well, what do we do when this stuff just keeps coming? We had the whole thing with the NSA, and then 2 months later, Apple gave us a phone that literally took your fingerprint. You know what I mean? And they keep handing it to us, and we keep doing it. I'm as guilty as anybody. But what do we do to manage some of this stuff?
No, there's no easy answer. I think that, again, I think it could be useful in certain situations, so it might be worthwhile to see where the technology goes. But for like every child, I think that's probably not necessary.
A lot of times people say in the comments that I'm like some technology alarmist or something, or I'm anti-technology. I just think it's important that we think about these questions. So how do you think we can manage sort of knowing that there's good stuff out of all this, of course, and most things that go awry usually intended to be good at the beginning, did they?
I think it's inevitable because of the convenience and the life-saving factors involved with this stuff. I'm sure that one day kids will be implanted with chips, and the government will say that they're not spying, and some future Edward Snowden will unveil that actually the government knows everything these kids have been doing. And so,
right, because the chips are connected to your optic nerve, and then they're watching the parents through the chips. You see what I'm talking about, people? Anyway, what do you think? Should we all be chipped? Is the game over? Let us know in the comments right down below. As Will Smith said, parents just don't understand how to bathe their kids.
Kentucky Child Protective Services has seized a family's 10 children after they were reportedly found living in makeshift tents in a tiny cabin on a garbage dump. According to a police report, the family was residing in a tent, the mother had given birth in a tent, there is no running water or septic, and none of the children were enrolled in school. Numerous piles of garbage, broken glass, and nails were also scattered about the property, as well as a pond that had no barrier around it to prevent the children from entering or falling in. The parents are sticking to their guns about their alternative lifestyle, saying the authorities are punishing them for embracing a free-range approach to parenting, which gives children total independence from infancy. The couple has created a GoFundMe page, which has amassed more than $30,000 in donations.
All right, so I'm very conflicted about this story. We just did a segment a second ago about microchipping kids and what that can lead to. And then you see instances like this where they're doing this free-range parenting thing. I'm not a huge fan of government overreach. I'm a libertarian in many ways, so I don't like the government getting involved and forcing everyone to do everything. However, if these kids were, around a pond that was dangerous and there was broken glass and they're not being bathed and there's other health issues, okay, I get it. Is there a happy balance between basically being this family and being the microchip freaks?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think that they're doing it right. I think that when you hear things like broken glass around, that's just, I don't think that there's any excuse, It seems like they're almost doing it for attention, you were saying, right, before. I'm not on their side. I think that the fact that we're now looking at this issue, I think it's
because
good.
You love the government and you want the government to be involved in every decision in everyone's life.
No, but it doesn't seem like the kids are. It doesn't seem like it's a safe environment for them.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So now we obviously don't know every specific about this family. In one of the pictures, at least on the GoFundMe page, they look pretty put together, and then we saw some stuff where it looked like they were literally in dirt or poop or something. Where do you fall on that? How involved the government should be in, making sure people are doing the right things with their kids?
I'm with Max on the broken glass. That seems sketchy to me, but when I have kids, I want them to look like those kids with dirt on their face. Because I want my kids to be living in the soil, experiencing life, not living some synthetic, enclosed life. When I heard the section on the report there that talked about how the pond didn't have an enclosure around it, that made my blood boil a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, come on, there is a certain limit. We have to let kids roam free at a certain point. So this family has got it right to some extent, but you're right, broken glass, adverse poverty, the kids could probably be living a little better than that.
Yeah, but I mean, you see people, families in the developing world living in tents all the time, and that's fine. I'm not, there's no judgment passed, but this particular family isn't in a network of other families that are doing that, and, a system hasn't emerged. They're just kind of it seems like they're winging it, it's not safe, it's not clean.
This desire for people to get off the grid. I do respect the idea that's going on here, that they want their kids, as you're saying, they want them to grow up with something a little bit different and not be staring at the phones all the time in every Black Mirror episode and all that. So I respect all that stuff. And yet at the same point, something seems off here. How do you draw the line of where someone should get involved? Is it's health, basically?
Yeah, well, I mean, at least let's look at how we treat this type of situation in the developing world. They have to have certain minimum standards by which we can call that a healthy family. The kids have to have access to the proper amount of nutrition, proper access to healthcare, certain levels of education. If they're doing all of those things to whatever minimum requirement we have set for them in whatever state they live, then beyond that, let them do whatever they want.
Do you guys think the off-the-grid movement is the next big thing, that more and more people are trying to do this?
Yeah, and I think companies like Tesla are definitely facilitating that. So I definitely think it's a positive thing for society. And truth be told, those kids are probably pretty healthy because they were probably born naturally. They're playing in the dirt, amongst healthy, microbiomes. Their immune systems are probably better than your average person born in a sterile hospital environment via C-section.
They probably know a lot more about survival than the average 4-year-old, right? That's living a more generic life.
Yeah, so I'm not hating. it's just when you read things about the broken glass, that it's happening on a garbage dump, that's where my radar goes off.
Just don't raise your kids in a garbage dump, and then besides that, do what you gotta do. Anyway, what do you think? Let us know in the comments right down below. Nobody wants to see Super Mario's nose hair, or do they?
Video games are about to look even more realistic thanks to separable subsurface scattering, or SSSS for short. Designed specifically to be used for virtual characters with human skin, SSSS renders in real time, meaning that it's not just to beautify cutscenes or cinematic intros. Instead, it's for real-time gameplay. Although this technology is not yet available in games currently on the shelf, the project has the official support of Activision and will be implemented in games in the near future.
All right, so I'm fascinated by this story because I used to be a major video game player. I don't want to brag, guys, but I used to be an assistant manager at electronics boutique. You may know that as GameStop. Nobody sold more Pokemon than me in 1999.
Wow.
True story. So what gets me about this is it seems to me like when I can still play like 8-bit Nintendo or Sega Genesis, and I still love it. It reminds me of childhood or something. When I try to play games on PS3 or Xbox 9 or whatever it is, it all seems too real to me. Am I just old and grumpy?
No, you're describing what people refer to as the Uncanny Valley paradox, where there's like this sort of U-shaped curve where when we get to a certain point of realism, if it's not real enough, it starts to be repulsive to us. But I think that this is really amazing technology. The fact that technology can now render that level of realism in real time, to me, is just incredible.
So is that scary? Because we all sort of had the same reaction when we saw that face in the package. Like, that looked real. That looked really real. Does that seem scary to you somehow?
I think it's going to be scary when they start to apply it to like the gore, like first-person killing games, when you're like killing real people. Who knows what that could encourage.
Yeah.
But I do think you're kind of an old man trying to repress the advancement of pixelation, and you want to keep it back in the 80s.
If I could get everything to still be 8-bit, I would be absolutely thrilled. So all right, so I know that some people will make the argument that you're saying that, there's always this idea that video games cause violence, even though from everything I've seen, there's no scientific proof that it's true, but that eventually will start, there's a difference between playing Doom or something from 1994 and shooting a lot of pixelated stuff to literally shooting things that look like humans.
Yeah.
So, and then you throw in some, prescription medication, and it's a bad combo, right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's scary, but I tend to look at the bright side of things. This technology might bring us one step closer to our own personal Ava from Ex Machina, who I'm completely in love with.
I saw it this week, it was amazing.
Incredible movie, so I think that we're one step closer to that.
So you want to bang a robot. You want to bang a robot,
utopian
right?
scenario of that film.
Yeah, wait, you're ignoring the question. You want to bang a robot, yes or no?
She was really sexy.
You would bang a robot, yeah?
No comment.
Bang a robot?
No.
No? Do you want to bang a robot? Let us know in the comments right down below. I've been warning you people that the internet is killing us.
These days, our go-to doctor is a search engine. According to Science Daily, researchers found that only 3 of the top 10 results from symptom-based Google searches were useful for self-diagnosis. A researcher told Science Daily, if you had searched for the symptoms of something like a bad head cold, you could end up thinking you had something far more serious, like an issue with the brain. This is kind of a problem, considering Google reported about 20 of its 100 billion searches every month was for health-related information.
I love this story because I think we all do this. Have you guys done this? Yes
All
or
the
no?
time.
You have anything, you have a headache, you immediately think you have cancer or some other...
Yeah. It's not good to, it's good to, just to inform yourself in general, but if you're actually unwell, you should go see a physician.
So is this one of the catch-22s? There's been a lot of catch-22s in the show today, but like of the internet and of technology and all this stuff, that we have access to all this information, but we don't really know what to do with it, do we?
Absolutely not. And everyone can be a publisher, and everyone is a publisher. And there's so many differing opinions. So when I have a headache, I'll Google it, and I'll freak out the first time because I'll think, oh great, I have a brain tumor. And so what I'll do then is look for another differing opinion that tells me I don't have a brain tumor.
Right.
And that's the biggest problem, because I can convince myself that I'm not sick when maybe I am.
Thus causing a brain tumor.
Exactly.
You spend too much time working on all this stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that the internet is not yet at the point where you can make an accurate diagnosis over the, there's no question about that. But I do think the internet is amazing for the fact that information is now free and we can learn more about our health and our own biology than ever before in any previous time. And so to me, I think that's amazing. And I regularly am Googling like weird health things, which I really enjoy. So
Right. So what's the last weirdest health thing that
Oh
you've
my
Googled?
God.
That you convinced yourself you had, I assume.
That I convinced myself I had. You know, I'm obsessed with brain health and nutrition stuff, so I think that like the fact that a lot of these studies are out there is incredible. I mean, before the internet, like you would either have to go to a library, but chances are libraries don't have the most up-to-date medical journals. So to me, I think it's incredible the world that we now live in.
Yeah. How do you guys know who to trust? I mean, I always say when it comes to news, like I don't know who to trust anymore. I feel like everyone has some partisan agenda. Everybody's owned by somebody. It's extremely hard to pick a news organization you trust. So when we're talking about health, it's that much more dangerous. Like, yeah, WebMD. I mean, that's pretty much, I guess, where everyone goes. I don't know who owns WebMD or what their connections are with pharmaceutical industries. How do you decide like what site you go to and how do you trust them?
I think Google decides because it's whatever pops up first, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how scary that is. WebMD seems to be the first one that pops up, but then there's like Livestrong. So you have Lance Armstrong's foundation.
And we know he's totally on the up and up, right? He's never done anything lied or...
He's totally cool.
Yeah.
So, I tend to think that what I do is I look for peer-reviewed journals. I start with the abstracts. And then if you're able to find like the full study, most people don't know this, but you can actually go to the references, the citation section of those studies, and they just lead to a Pandora's box of just like insight and information that you can track infinitely down the rabbit hole. And to me, it's really, really awesome. But
I feel like you did much better in school than I did. I did pretty good. I did do pretty good, but like your shit was much more research than mine.
I was really interested in science and computer science in high school, but I didn't end up going the academic route. I ended up studying psychology and film. The human machine to me has always been an endless source of wonder and fascination.
That's another good quote. You're on it with the quotes today. So you mentioned this before about the brain tumor thing, but have you ever convinced yourself that you really had something?
Well, I got back from Liberia last year. I did 4 trips to Liberia working for RYOT.
Yeah.
And when I came back, was freaking out that I may have Ebola. So I was constantly searching symptoms of Ebola.
Yeah.
The same page over and over again, trying to reassure myself that I don't.
Yeah.
And so, at least at that time, it worked for me, calmed me down.
So it did calm you down.
It did calm me down.
And did you have any of the symptoms that? Because the symptoms were sort of flu-like, right? There wasn't something that, it wasn't like, people thought it was going to be like blood shooting out of your eyes.
Yeah. Well, the problem is when you've been somewhere where they have Ebola, you get the slightest headache and you freak out.
Yeah.
And I'm a hypochondriac anyway, but I got a headache and I'm like, oh my gosh, symptoms of Ebola, and it's like first one, headache. And
wait. Did you just say you're a hypochondriac? You're a hypochondriac.
Oh, yeah.
And you went to Liberia to
Absolutely.
do the Ebola documentary. Well, what is that? There's got to be some sort of psychological condition. You
Probably.
I'll
Google it.
All right, what do you guys think? Are you diagnosing yourselves with major psychological or physiological disease right now? Let us know in the comments right down below. All right, that is the big show. We will do it again next week. Max, where can the good people find you?
Twitter at Max Lugavere, and I've also started YouTubing. I'm building up my own YouTube channel, so at Max Lugavere on YouTube.
I like how you laugh through that. We're a YouTube show.
Yeah, I know that, but I've got such a tiny little YouTube channel, but I'm working on it. I'm not a pro yet, like you.
Well,
so I'm humbled to be,
I'm only 40 million subscribers behind Bieber, so David Darg, where can the good people find you online?
Follow us at RYOT News, RYOT News, and check us out. Every story lets you take action.
There you go. All right, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week.